This session is part of the Indie Author Fringe Conference, a 3 times a year author conference fringed to the major publishing fairs London Book Fair, Book Expo America and Frankfurt Book Fair. The Indie Author Fringe is run under the stewardship of the Alliance of Independent Authors, is organised by writers for writers and is free to attend. Let's see who's sharing self-publishing insights in this session.
Hello, my name is Debbie Young and I am the commissioning editor of the Alliance of Independent Authors Advice Centre blog. I also write guidebooks for self-help for authors as part of the ALLi Self-Publishing Success series, and the most recent of those being how to get your self-published book into a bookstore. And also I co-wrote with our news editor Dan Holloway a book called Opening Up to Indie Authors. I'll be drawing on information in both of those books for my talk today, and those are both also good books to read if you want to learn a little bit more about the topic when I've finished. So, topic of my talk today. Question: can an indie author make money with print books? Now, I could make this the shortest talk of the session by just saying yes and no, but I will elaborate because actually it's a much more complex question and answer than that, although a surprising number of authors do just dismiss it as an option. So I'm going to be talking to you about why you should consider including print in your offer to your readers, how to go about it in the way that is most likely to make you money, and at least to break even if not make a profit. And also I'll be talking about why you should consider print books, not just as another income stream, although of course ideally they should be, but why they can offer you lots of other advantages as well, which is the reason that I think that all indie authors ought to have some print editions of their books, even if, like most indie authors, you find you are selling mostly ebooks and increasingly audio, which is going to take more and more of the slice of the pie as time goes by. So, first of all, let's just be clear about this. You can be an indie author without having any print books at all, without ever turning your ebooks into paperbacks or indeed hardbacks. In the past, a lot of indie authors have done that, partly because it's the easiest way of entering the indie environment. It's pretty easy, relatively easy, just to set yourself up as publishing ebooks. You can upload Word files with a little bit of formatting at the simplest level to create space, to KDP, and publish an ebook pretty much at the touch of a button. And that's quick and easy. Ideally, you will also have invested in a professional editor and proofreader. You will either have had somebody format the book for you, or you've spent some time doing that yourself. Ideally, you will have had a professional looking cover done or come up with a cover that passes muster yourself. So you can do that, ping that up onto KDP to sell as a Kindle book, go wide if you want to. That's typical next step, second step for a lot of indies, so that you've got your ebook selling in different formats on different platforms around the world. That is the quickest, easiest, simplest way to publish your books as an independent author and then get on to write the next one. But if you don't use print, if you don't ever issue your books as paperbacks, then you're missing a lot of tricks. First of all, you're cutting yourself off from readers who never read ebooks, and there are plenty who don't. The death of the ebook, or the decline of the ebook, is quite often bandied about in the news, both in the general media and in the publishing news. But I don't think anyone really thinks the ebook is going to disappear anytime soon. But at the same time, print is definitely thriving, particularly as production qualities continue to go up with print books. Print books are still very desirable things for people to have. So if you don't offer print, then you're missing out on a significant sector of the market of people who like to have print books, who like to buy them for themselves, for other people. There are people who, although reading primarily on ebooks, like to go on for a book that they've particularly enjoyed to buy it in print as well, either for themselves because they plan to reread it, or they want to keep it on the shelves, or because they want to gift it to friends and relations. Yes, you can gift ebooks, but and yes, they're a lot easier to wrap, but they're not quite the same. They don't have the same sort of feel to them as a gift. So another good reason for doing print is to have if you've got a print book, you can show it to people, you can tell them about it. Books are very tactile. People like to pick up books, flick them through, look at the cover, look at the blurb on the back, flick through to see some sample pages, maybe the beginning, sometimes the ending if they're that kind of reader. If you don't have a physical book, you can't give them that tactile experience. There are still people who don't really believe a book exists, or that a book is professional and real and actually published unless it is out in physical form. Now, we can dispute that with them till we're blue in the face, but if they're not keen on ebooks, then you're never going to persuade them. You're not going to change their mind. Another reason to have a print book is to get into a physical bookstore, into a bricks and mortar bookstore. Having a print book doesn't mean you have a guaranteed inroad. You've got no entitlement into a bookstore. Goodness knows there are hundreds of thousands of books competing for that same limited shelf space in each bookstore. But if you haven't actually got the product at all, then you're reducing your chances to zero. It's the old adage, if you want to win the lottery, you have to buy a ticket. There are also other uses of print books that may not actually be selling them, but will still help you with your marketing and to help you raise your profile as an author. For example, Goodreads giveaways are a great way to raise awareness of your books before an audience of known avid book readers. At the moment, you can't give away ebooks in a Goodreads giveaway. You can only give away print books. So given that Goodreads has millions of members around the world who avidly buy books and look out for books, you're cutting yourselves off from that market, at least in terms of giveaway. Obviously they can still read and review your ebooks, but it doesn't, you're not able to get in the giveaways part of Goodreads there. It's also very nice just to have the books to kind of as a reward for yourself, because if you've written a book, you've probably slaved weeks, months, years over it to get it to where you want it to be. And I think it's kind of a shame not to have a printed book for posterity, to leave for your children and grandchildren, to have on your shelf, to casually leave on your coffee table when you've got visitors coming round. And I kind of think you deserve one. Now, producing a printed book isn't as expensive or difficult as it used to be in the old days of vanity press. With print on demand, you don't have much outlay once you've got the initial formatting and cover design done. Obviously, you've got the editing done, but you'll have had that done for an ebook anyway. If you've had an ebook cover done, there's not very much more to get it turned into a print cover. So the upfront costs are relatively low because you're not having to buy inventory. You're not having to pay for a large print run. The whole point of print on demand in using digital technology is that you can order a single copy or 5 copies or 10 copies, however many you want, and the unit cost will be very little different from if you're ordering 100, 500 copies using popular print on demand producers. Typically indie authors will use Amazon's CreateSpace and either Lightning Source or Ingram Spark, who are together the leading print-on-demand suppliers. There are others as well. You can also get your print run, a short print run done with book specialist printers, of which there are many, at similar prices if you're having maybe 50 or 100 done at a time. But with Amazon and Ingram Spark, you can call them off literally one at a time. What some people do, if they literally only want a couple of copies at a time, is they just put it up onto Amazon via CreateSpace and order it from the shop front as if they're a normal customer, and you can just get one or two whenever you need them. If you need one, perhaps you're giving a talk and you want to have a couple of copies to hold in your hand, or you're giving one as a raffle prize to a local community event or something like that. But with using either CreateSpace or Ingram Spark, you can get a few copies very cheaply, very affordably, whenever you need them, which means that you don't have to fill up your garage or your box room or your spare bedroom with boxes and boxes, as they used to have to do in the olden days when everything was printed in pre-digital formats. So unless you're on a really, really tight budget, I would say get some print books done. Now, if you're going to do that, then ALLi's standard advice to do it properly is to upload your files to both Amazon via CreateSpace, which is its paperback service, and to Ingram Spark. Why do both? Well, if you only use Ingram Spark, then Amazon won't count your books as being in their stock, and you will often get listings when somebody looks at your books page on the Amazon website of saying that your book is out of stock, and that the customer will have to wait a week, 2 weeks, or an unknown time until it's in stock. You can get around that by uploading virtually the same file to both services. And that means that they will always show up as in stock, so you won't have any obstacle to put customers off ordering via Amazon. If it's also up on CreateSpace, not only can you order it from your books from Ingram Spark when you want stock, but it means that it puts it into the databases of various distributors, so that in the UK, for example, Gardners and Bertrams are the main distributors, and so a bookshop looking up an actual bookstore, bricks and mortar bookstore, will be able to find your book on their supplier's database and order your book directly from them, so you don't have to worry about fulfilling orders yourself. It's very, very easy. So how do you produce the artwork? I keep saying, oh, it's really easy. Well, okay, it's not something that you can instantly do standing on your head. You do have to learn a few bits of jargon and a few tricks. If it's really beyond you, you can pay formatters to do it, or if you're not interested, or if you're cash rich, time poor, you don't have to learn to do the layout yourself. But it can be done. Again, if you're starting out and you're on a very low budget, then you can use a combination of Word and various design programs. Canva.com is a very good one. InDesign is the more professional one for covers as well as interiors. Canva, obviously, for covers rather than interiors. Vellum and Scrivener are both very popular for formatting the insides. Or, as I say, you can outsource it to a specialist. You can, once you've got your files for the interior and the exterior, you can upload them and then get the proof online. You can also choose to order a physical proof if you want to, but you can actually save time just by getting the proof online and going through it very, very carefully. I'd recommend you get a physical proof as well, but that's only going to cost you the cost of a single book plus the shipping. And so you can actually go through the whole process quite quickly. So it's not going to take a lot of your time, and in relation to the amount of time and effort it takes you to upload the files, the benefits that you get out of it by having a print book available, the benefits really outweigh the trouble and time and cost. There are some differences, significant differences, between formatting for print and formatting for ebook. The cover, obviously you have to have a back to the cover as well as the front, and it has to be a much higher resolution. There are very slight differences in the formats for Ingram Spark and CreateSpace because they're printed in a slightly different way, but both of those services offer you detailed instructions on how to prepare the covers, the specifications, the size, the kind of file you have to save it as. For the interior, it's much more complicated or sophisticated than an ebook, in that when you're formatting an ebook, you basically strip out practically all the formatting. With paperback, you have to make sure that you've got the page breaks in the right place, the page numbering in the right place, the margins right, mirror margins, so that it works as a book rather than as a single sheet. And the order that you put the content in is a bit different, because with an ebook you tend to start the book as soon as the actual text of the book as soon as you can, and put all the acknowledgements and copyright and stuff at the back. With a paperback, well, you've seen lots of paperbacks, you know the order these things normally run in. But the interior, actually, if you know how to format a Word file, you would be able to format your own paperback interior, particularly if you're following CreateSpace and Ingram's instructions. So what kind of profit margins, back to the original question, can you make money out of print books? Well, you can. The margin won't be as big as the ebook, as you will get on an ebook potentially, partly because ebook margins are so big. When you consider that the average print book published by a trade publisher will earn the author about 5% of the cover price for the author, so that's 5 cents in the dollar or 5p in the pound. When you think that on an ebook, the author is typically making between 35 and 70% of the cover price, then that makes the relative margins, the margins that you can make on a paperback, seem very slim. Even so, you will generally make more of a margin on your paperback than if you were published by a trade publisher. Okay, yes, you have had the upfront costs of the formatting and the cover design, the editing and so forth, which you would not have to pay yourself with a trade publisher. But once you've got that basic content set up, then you can still make a good margin. Now, the good news here is that you determine what that margin will be because you control the price. Both CreateSpace and Ingram Spark allow you to set exactly what your price will be. Now, they have some recommended guidelines and also some constraints. Because you're not paying up front for the printing, both of those services take their payment for printing out of each time a book is sold. They extract their margin, their costs then. You're only then being given the rest of it. What that means is that you're not paying up front, but you are having to work out what part of that remainder will come to you, because as well as the print costs, both CreateSpace and Ingram Spark will take sort of a service charge, and Ingram Spark will also, via their distributors and the wholesalers, have to make a certain proportion available to the bookseller, because the bookseller needs to take his payment for selling your book. Now, sometimes first-time authors or naive authors are quite surprised at what kind of percentage they need to give up out of the cost of their book. The guidelines from CreateSpace are that you should set your margins, I think it's between 35 and 54%. It depends on the country. The country of distribution dictates the precise range. And the same with Ingram. You set the price for the different territories, the discount for the different territories that you're prepared to accept. So you'll go through country by country on a form on the website, specifying what your list price will be and what the percentage discount the actual seller will get. It's slightly more complicated than that, because if you're, for example, putting a 40% discount, the bookseller who has it in his shop is not necessarily going to get all of that 40%, because the distributor or wholesaler will also need to have their share of that cost. So it may be that the bookseller only gets 25% at the end of the day. You can, I think the maximum percentage discount that you can offer is 55%. The minimum is 30 or 35%. It's tempting to think, oh, I'd better give the maximum discount because then the stockists will be more likely to accept my book and put it in their shop. It could be equally tempting to think, well, I want to give them as little as possible and keep as much for myself. Therefore, I'll make it the minimum of 30 to 35%. And there's a real trade-off between your profit motive and how much you want to sell your books. But what you mustn't forget is that even if you set it to the maximum of generosity, it doesn't mean that your books will definitely get into a bookshop. It just means that a bookseller ordering your book will be more or less pleased with the reward they get. They will be more likely, if your book is very academic, very high priced, very specialist, they'll be more likely to order it in. Almost all booksellers will order a book that's available if somebody particularly orders it. And so you may still get some orders without doing any marketing to the bookshops, if you have readers who you know are going to a bookshop and order it. So there's lots of variables there to take into account. You also have to think, look at the other books that your book is comparable to, and to see what price they're selling at, because there's no point if you're writing, say, a romantic novel of a certain number of pages that would normally sell for £8 or $12 in a shop. There's no earthly point in setting yours at, say, £20 or $25 so that you can get more money out of it, because nobody is going to buy a book that is vastly more expensive than its equivalent books by other authors, particularly if you are not especially well known yet. So lots of different thoughts to take into account there. There are some authors that I know who have even been prepared to take a loss on their print books to get them out into shops. Think very carefully if you're going to do that. Do you really, really want to do that? I would question why anyone would do that. You also have to be careful with Ingram Spark. There's a box to tick to say whether you're prepared to offer sale or return. A lot of people don't realise that bookstores operate on a sale or return basis, so they're used to being able to order books from publishers, so that they can order one on spec. If they don't sell it, they can return it and get their money back. Now, for big publishers, they're set up so they can absorb those kinds of returns. But for an individual who is selling just a few books, if you on print on demand, if you sell a book that way and then it gets returned, you will still have to pay the cost of that book, the print cost of that book. And when a book is returned, it's unlikely to be in a condition that is resaleable. So don't tick yes for sale or return, tick no. And although you might think, well, that is less likely to get you a sale in a bookshop, it's the safer bet. Now, I've talked quite a bit there about selling books into bookstores. There are lots of other ways to use print books that will help you market your books overall, to market yourself as an author, to raise the profile and awareness of your work. You can use books as props at talks that you give at public events, as a sort of a show and tell, to hold up your book while you're talking, to embed it into people's memory so they know to go away and order it. You can use them as prizes for local events. You can, or events on your website, as giveaways for Goodreads. You can use them to display anywhere you like. I quite often have a couple of my latest books on the parcel shelf in the back of my car, because it's all free advertising. I give away quite a few books. Earlier today I was up at Cheltenham Literature Festival in the Writers' Room doing an interview on the local BBC radio, and I was introduced to a few people that I hadn't met before, and it was a very nice feeling to be able to give them copies of my books. I hope they'll now become readers and tell their friends and all that sort of thing. People give them away to people on trains, if you're sitting next to someone interesting on the bus or on the aeroplane. I know people who have given them away to people who've been servicing their car, hospital receptionists. Receptionists are great people to give your books to, because they meet a lot of people every day, they network a lot, and they'll tell people about them. Leave them on the back seat of a taxi. There are official ways of distributing books for free, such as book crossing, books on the underground, books on the subway, little free libraries. So having them just opens up those opportunities for you to reach more readers who may go on to buy more of your print books, or indeed your ebooks, to join your mailing list, or whatever you've got listed in the back of your print books as promotion. So a quick run through at the end then of some of the do's and don'ts. Do's, first of all. Do produce some paperbacks. Always have some with you. Always have some author copies. Don't have to be a lot of them, but have some around. You never know when they might come in handy. Publish your paperbacks both through CreateSpace and Ingram Spark to get maximum reach, and to enable you to have the possibility of getting your books sold in bookstores. Be prepared to give some away for marketing purposes to raise awareness. Always handy to have, and it just gives you a nice feeling as well to do that. And do price them realistically for your market, but not so that you're going to be making a loss. Don't expect to make a fortune out of paperbacks, but they will give you more reach, and they will help in your marketing overall. Don't order vast quantities of your author copies, because you don't need to. Just order them a few at a time. It's good for your cash flow. And also, you never know, you might find you want to make lots of changes, or at least some changes, after you've launched it. Maybe correcting a typo, or changing a cover to add an endorsement that you've had in a great review. People quite often replace covers every year or so. And if you order in a large number of author copies, you'll be surprised how long it takes you to get rid of them all. So just a few at a time. Don't assume that having a print book will automatically get you into bookshops, but it will make it possible for bookstores to order your books if they want to. Don't tick the sale or return box to allow sale or return. And don't expect to make a huge profit on each book. It'll be cents or pence rather than dollars or pounds per book typically, but remember, you're probably making more than a trade published author would in terms of percentage of your cover price. So that's been a quick run through really of the key points on how to use print books in your total offering as an author. If you'd like to read more on either of those topics, there are two good books that I can recommend because I wrote them. There's the Opening Up to Indie Authors, which I co-wrote with our news editor Dan Holloway. There's also Authors for Books, as part of our Authors for Bookstores campaign. There's the book How to Get Your Self-Published Book into Bookstores. Both of those are available as ebooks, funnily enough, to download for free if you're a member of ALLi. One of the many, many benefits of joining ALLi as a paid-up member. You can also buy them through all the usual sources. So, I hope that's been helpful. We have covered a lot of aspects of this topic on the Alliance of Independent Authors blog. We've got 3 or 4 posts on using CreateSpace and Ingram Spark together. We've got posts about pricing. We've got posts about working with bookstores. If you want to look them up, the easiest way is to go to the advice blog, which is www.selfpublishingadvice.org, and there's a search box in the sidebar, so just key in there any of the keywords that will take you to where you want to go, and you should find plenty there. Thank you very much for listening, and the best of luck to you whether you are going forth with ebooks, print books, audio, or indeed other formats that haven't yet been invented. I'm sure there will be some along if we wait long enough. Okay, thank you very much. Bye bye.
You've been listening to another great session brought to you by the Indie Author Fringe and the Alliance of Independent Authors, ALLi. You can find out more about both by visiting ALLi's Self-Publishing Advice Centre, www.selfpublishingadvice.org. Now, go write and publish.